Today, we're going to explain a movie where a boy falls in love with his friend's mother and makes several attempts to get closer to her and fulfill his desires. The film begins with a scene at a school where a teachers' meeting is held at the start of the academic year. Here, we meet a literature teacher named Germain. He assigns his class an essay task where students must describe what they did over the weekend in a literary format. Germain reviews the assignments at home with his wife, Jean, who sells provocative sculptures for a living. Jean notices the assignments and remarks on how poorly written they are. Germain explains that he asked the students to write about their weekend in a literary style, but their responses were mundane, like one student mentioning buying a toy gun at a fair, and another talking about eating ice cream from a vendor. However, Germain comes across an essay by a student named Claude that stands out. Claude writes about visiting his friend Rafa's house under the pretext of preparing for a match. He describes how he had been curious about Rafa's house for a long time, often watching it from the outside. On one such visit, he finally saw Rafa's mother, and her appearance sent a thrill through him. He then planned to exploit Rafa's weak academic abilities to visit their house more often. Claude writes about deliberately giving Rafa a difficult problem to solve, then wandering around the house under the guise of exploring. He describes being captivated by the scent of a middle-class woman's perfume and following it to a room where he finds Rafa's mother. Claude observes her until she notices him and asks if he's looking for the bathroom. She shows him the way before sitting back on the sofa. Claude, however, returns to Rafa's room and pretends to help him with his studies, all the while devising schemes to spend more time in the house. The essay ends with the words, "To be continued." Reading this essay, Germain is struck by Claude's sophisticated use of language and literary style, but fails to notice the questionable intentions behind his words. Meanwhile, the viewers understand Claude's infatuation with Rafa's mother. Jean, however, is disturbed by the essay and urges Germain to speak with the school director about Claude, as she finds his thoughts unsettling for a boy his age. Germain, though impressed with Claude's literary talent, decides to mentor him to develop his skills further, unaware of Claude's ulterior motives. In subsequent essays, Claude writes about his increasing fascination with Rafa's mother. He describes observing her photo on the wall and imagining Rafa's father as an obstacle in his path. He relishes moments where Rafa's parents argue, thinking this will bring him closer to Rafa's mother. Germain grows increasingly concerned, but still doesn't address Claude's troubling fixation. Jean continues to warn Germain, but he brushes it off as normal behavior for boys of Claude's age. Things escalate when Claude manipulates Rafa's studies to make himself indispensable, ensuring he can keep visiting the house. Jean insists Germain should stop encouraging Claude, but Germain is torn between helping Claude grow as a writer and addressing the ethical dilemma of his behavior. Meanwhile, Claude's obsession deepens as he starts imagining scenarios where Rafa's parents' conflicts would work in his favor. He describes these thoughts in his essays, each ending with "To be continued." The tension builds when Rafa's mother begins to suspect Claude's motives. She insists they hire a new tutor for Rafa, barring Claude from the house. This devastates Claude, who becomes restless and desperate. He persuades Germain to steal a math exam paper from the school so Rafa can perform well and avoid needing a new tutor. Reluctantly, Germain agrees, further entangling himself in Claude's schemes. Claude uses the stolen exam to ensure Rafa scores well, solidifying his access to the household. However, his increasingly bold and manipulative actions create more complications. Germain starts questioning his decision to support Claude, but feels trapped by the consequences of his earlier choices. Meanwhile, Claude's writings become darker, reflecting his obsession and the lengths he's willing to go to fulfill his desires. As the story unfolds, the lines between mentorship and complicity blur. Germain's belief in Claude's potential as a writer blinds him to the moral implications of his actions. The film takes a chilling turn as Claude's manipulative tendencies and obsession lead to unforeseen consequences, leaving the viewers questioning the nature of talent, morality, and obsession. Meanwhile, Rafa's parents are quite happy and say that this progress is all thanks to Claude, as he was the one who taught Rafa well. They even suggest that Claude should continue tutoring Rafa in math. Hearing this, Claude's joy turns sour, and his excitement shifts to uneasiness. Rafa then casually tells Claude that he knows Germain gave him the stolen exam paper and advises Claude to stay away from him because Germain's wife trades in provocative sculptures. Here, Germain doesn't understand why Rafa is making such remarks, but this will become clear later in the movie. One day, Rafa plans to play basketball with his father and invites Claude to join them. But Claude, thinking quickly, declines the invitation, realizing that while they are out, Rafa's mother will be alone at home, making it the perfect opportunity to make his move. As soon as Rafa and his father leave for the game, Claude heads straight to their house. He rings the doorbell and Rafa's mother answers. She tells him that Rafa isn't home. Claude responds that he knows but has come to retrieve his math book, which he claims he left at their house earlier. Rafa's mother invites him in to look for the book, and they search the room together, though the book is nowhere to be found because Claude never came for the book in the first place. His intentions are entirely different. While searching, Claude begins to play his sympathy card. He remarks that the earrings Rafa's mother is wearing are just like the ones his own mother used to wear before she left him. Hearing this, Rafa's mother begins to feel compassion for Claude. They sit and talk, sharing a drink. Seeing this, Claude feels he is getting closer to Rafa's mother, but he knows these things take time and persistence. Back at Germain's home, Jean is worried about where all this will lead. She tells Germain that when Rafa and his father find out what's happening, they will destroy Claude. Germain brushes it off, saying nothing like that will happen. The next day, Germain returns home and gives Jean another essay written by Claude. Jean is furious, accusing Germain of obsessing over this student and ignoring her. She even suggests Germain might have fallen in love with the boy. Germain denies this and insists he is only nurturing Claude's talent. Jean dismisses his defense, stating that men's priorities often shift with age, but Germain assures her this isn't the case. In the new essay, Claude writes about being alone in Rafa's room when Rafa calls him his best friend and unexpectedly kisses him. This leaves the viewers understanding Rafa's earlier suggestion to stay away from Germain was likely rooted in jealousy over how close Germain and Claude had become. In the same essay, Claude describes sneaking to Rafa's parents' room and spying on them while they share intimate moments. Claude imagines himself as part of the scene, inserting himself into their relationship. As Claude's fixation on Rafa's mother grows, he begins to act more boldly. Rafa's father and mother have frequent arguments, which Claude eavesdrops on from outside their room. One day, he hears Rafa's father leave after a fight, which Claude takes as the perfect opportunity. He gives Rafa's mother a letter he had prepared earlier. The next day, Rafa's mother reads the letter, calling Claude to discuss it. She is shocked by the contents, which are highly inappropriate and express Claude's feelings for her. She warns him about the consequences if Rafa's father finds out. Claude dismisses her concerns, saying the letter wasn't meant for Rafa's father but for her alone. In a shocking turn, Rafa's mother begins to see something in Claude's persistence. She kisses him passionately, further complicating the situation. Rafa, standing outside, sees his mother and Claude together. Devastated, Rafa goes to his room and commits suicide. Claude writes about this incident in his essay, ending with, "To be continued." Germain, reading this, becomes extremely disturbed and rushes to the school to find Claude. He learns that Rafa isn't at school that day because of the family tragedy. Later, Claude writes another essay where he describes how Rafa's mother confesses she is pregnant, rekindling the love between Rafa's parents. Rafa's father decides to fire Claude as Rafa's tutor, barring him from their home. In his essay, Claude writes, "To be continued," signaling that his obsession is far from over. Germain, realizing the danger Claude poses, forbids him from writing further essays or visiting Rafa's family again. However, Claude defies Germain and visits Rafa's house again. Seeing him, Rafa's mother meets him outside and returns the letter he had written. Claude, in despair, proposes they leave everything behind and escape somewhere far away. She rejects him, telling him he is still just a child and that what happened between them was a mistake. Her rejection devastates Claude, who begins to cry. Rafa's mother explains how much his actions have hurt her family. When Claude tries to kiss her again, she pushes him away and leaves. Claude, heartbroken and angry, decides to confront Germain. He visits Germain's home, where Jean answers the door. Claude begins to manipulate her emotions, sowing doubts about Germain's fidelity. Eventually, Jean succumbs to Claude's charm, and they sleep together. Claude documents this incident in an essay, leaving it at Germain's house before departing. The next day, Germain is fired from his teaching job after Rafa's father informs the school director about the stolen exam paper. Returning home, Germain finds Jean preparing to leave him, accusing him of neglect and saying she can't stay in a marriage overshadowed by Claude's influence. Germain sits alone, reflecting on how his life has been destroyed by his misguided trust in Claude. In the final scene, Germain is seen sitting on a bench when Claude approaches. Germain sarcastically asks if Claude has come to destroy what little is left of his life. Claude sits beside him and they begin to talk. Germaine watches Claude stare at the windows of nearby homes, realizing that Claude is already imagining his next story. The movie ends with the words, "The story continues." Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more such intriguing movie explanation.